Welcome back to Mdracketsports channel. In this video, we answer the question, what is difference between pickleball and tennis? So now that we have a better understanding of the differences between the two sports, how are they similar? For those looking to pick a fight with the other side, you may be surprised at how similar the two sports actually are. 1. Net is similar in height. 36 inches in the middle for tennis, 34 inches in the middle for pickleball. 2. Singles or doubles. Both tennis and pickleball can be played as singles or doubles. Pickleball singles is a very similar game to tennis singles. However, pickleball doubles is completely different than tennis doubles. Trust me. 3. Bend knees and make contact in front. Technique is very similar between the two sports. In both, bend your knees and make contact with the ball out in front of your body for best results. 4. Don't just use your arm when swinging. A second technique tidbit that applies to both sports is this: don't just use your arm when swinging. Use your legs, hips, core, and larger muscle groups. 5. Topspin, backspin, slice, and side spin. Shots in both pickleball and tennis can be hit with a variety of spin. Although the tennis racket strings will exacerbate the spin, players in both sports can make use of topspin, backspin, and side spin to manipulate the flight and bounce of the ball. 6. Eye-hand coordination. Typically, if one is good in one racket or paddle sport, they will be pretty good in others. Having good eye-hand coordination is a prerequisite for both tennis and pickleball. 7. Mental toughness. Same for mental toughness. Both sports require the ability to focus on the present and forget past points or rallies. 8. Competitive. Tennis players and pickleball players are both competitive, so much so that there are an ample number of tournaments and leagues happening seemingly every week. 9. Professional tours. Both pickleball and tennis have professional tours. In tennis, there are the ATP and WTA tours. In pickleball, there are the AP and PPA tours. 10. Multi-generational. What I absolutely love about both sports is that they can be played at any age. Pickleballs are light and bounce low. I always have a light chuckle whenever I see a tennis player's first reaction of how a pickleball behaves. The bewildered look on their face is priceless. The reason why they're so confused is that they're not used to how low a pickleball bounces. Tennis balls are basically big bouncy balls. The inside of the ball is made of a hollow rubber core that compresses when struck or dropped. That same rubber core is what makes the ball bounce so high. But to a tennis player, this bounciness is normal and expected. Pickleballs, on the other hand, don't bounce very high because they are a shell, instead of having a core. They are made out of a hard, sometimes delicate, plastic. The ball does not compress and thus doesn't bounce very high. Types of balls. In general, there are two different types of balls. You've got indoor balls like the ever-popular Jugs ball and outdoor balls like the Dura 40. Pickleballs are easily affected by the wind considering that they are essentially just wiffle balls. To battle this, outdoor balls have to be made with much smaller holes. This keeps the wind from affecting the ball as much. There are also balls that are built for a specific purpose. Because pickleballs are more of a plastic shell than an actual solid ball, they tend to crack easily. It gets very annoying to keep replacing balls all the time, so some manufacturers make balls that are extra durable. Paddles versus rackets. To my ears, both pickleball paddles and tennis rackets make beautiful noises. There's nothing better than the thwack of a tennis racket or the ping of a pickleball paddle. As you'd expect, there are massive differences between pickleball paddles and tennis rackets. Here's a picture of a tennis racket that I found in my garage and one of the most popular pickleball paddles, the PaddleTech Tempest Wave. As you can see, pickleball paddles are half the length of a racket, are more rectangle-shaped and have much shorter handles. Most people think of a pickleball paddle as an oversized ping-pong paddle. That's pretty accurate, but it's a bit more complex than that. It's not just the size and shape of these two sporting instruments that are important to look at. It's how they behave. The performance differences are so huge that the way you have to play pickleball and the way you swing is completely different than tennis. Why? Tennis rackets sink, pickleball paddles dink. That pretty much sums it up. When you strike a tennis ball with a tennis racket, the ball compresses into the racket and the strings bend slightly to accommodate. But in pickleball, this doesn't happen. Pickleball paddles are like stone walls. Like we talked about in the last point, pickleballs do not compress. So when you strike a pickleball with your paddle, it pops off immediately and will deflect, not compress. Thus, when you're playing pickleball, you cannot grip the ball and spin it very well. The moment of contact in pickleball doesn't last that long for physics to do its thing. Another difference between tennis rackets and pickleball paddles is that pickleball paddles have a core. What you see above is not an empty vessel. There's a lot of stuff going on inside that isn't being shown. Modern-day pickleball paddles are called composite paddles. Composite just refers to multiple different parts or pieces that come together to make one thing. A composite paddle consists of a core, a face, and the edge guard. The core isn't just a solid material. In order to make paddles light, the cores are constructed in a honeycomb shape. Each of the honeycomb cells is empty. This creates a solid and strong material, but without the heaviness. Paddle cores can be made of Nomex, aluminum, or the most popular option, polymer, which is just plastic. If you want to read more about pickleball paddles cores and all the differences, feel free to go here. The core is covered by a face material in order to give your paddle a smooth striking surface. These faces can be made of graphite, a composite material of any kind, or even fiberglass. All of this is then surrounded by an edge guard which keeps the paddle from falling apart on the edges. The court is significantly smaller. A comment you hear a lot about pickleball is that the court is either tiny or seems miniature in some way. If you come from tennis, this is totally true. The dimensions of a pickleball court are only 20 feet by 44 feet. You may recognize these dimensions from a similar cousin of ours, badminton. Indeed, pickleball was originally invented on a badminton court while putting the net all the way down to the ground. But when you compare pickleball to tennis, the difference in size is obvious. The net is also significantly smaller. Whenever I go to a tennis court facility to play pickleball, I'm always in awe at how huge the tennis nets look to me. I feel like a chipmunk looking up in the shadow of an elephant. But don't let the small stature of a pickleball net fool you. It's just as hard to get the ball over the net as it is in tennis. In fact, sometimes, it can be maddening when you can't get the ball over. My 3-year-old niece is taller than a pickleball net, so surely I should be able to get it over, right? Not so fast. The kitchen. Where does the pickleball kitchen get its name? Honestly, I have no idea. But there's another name for it called the non-volley zone. This just means that you can't volley shots while you're in this zone. A volley is a ball struck out of the air without the ball having bounced yet. Unlike tennis, you can't stand at the net and smash balls over in pickleball. The court is too small for that. Back in the 1960s, when the sport was first developing, the original founders noticed early on how serious of an issue this was. There was one guy in particular who would just stand at the net. Due to his height, he could smash everything over with ease. Needless to say, they changed the rules around so this wouldn't happen. Enter the non-volley zone. The non-volley zone is a section of the court that extends from the net backward. It's 7 feet deep and is on both sides of the court. The non-volley zone is the technical name for it, but colloquially, everyone calls it the kitchen. The rule is simple. You cannot be standing in the non-volley zone and hit a volley. Volleys are typically very powerful and players often win with shots like these. But with the non-volley or kitchen rule, this makes the sport actually playable. The kitchen is what separates pickleball from other racket sports. If there was no kitchen, there would be no pickleball. Pickleball is played at the kitchen line. The kind of play that you see in tennis doesn't exist in pickleball. You'll never see people smacking the ball back and forth from the baselines. It never happens. And if it does happen, the person doing it will lose very quickly. Instead, pickleball is almost exclusively played at the kitchen line. Remember that kitchen zone that we talked about in the last point? There's also a line that separates it from the rest of the court. Pickleball players will stand right before the line without touching it. The reason why players do this is because standing at the kitchen line is what gives you the best advantage. 95% plus of all points won are from the net. Here are a few reasons. Standing at the kitchen line means that you're always ready for a high ball to smash for the win. The further you stand away from the kitchen line, the more likely your opponent will hit to your feet, which are very difficult shots to return. The closer you are to the net, the easier it is to get the ball over the net.
Go to Mdracketsports.com. Explore more pickleball content.